Welcome, everyone. My name is Tariq Malik. I am in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. And today we have the pleasure of speaking on a subject which has been close to my heart for the last 18 years. I've been doing fractional CFO work. Recently, I've shed off my single shingle and I've joined FocusCFO. So full disclosure, one of the speakers, Brad, is my boss, so I have to be respectful to him. And
I work for everybody else. I work for everybody else.
So we got two distinct speakers today. One of them is Mark Blackton, who has been doing the fractional work for a very long time, and we'll all be very happy to hear him out. And we have Martyn, who's the founder and the guy who started the whole thing as FocusCFO back in 2001. So without further ado, we're not going to go through the introductions because with 26 people, we'll probably spend next half an hour into introductions. If somebody wishes to introduce themselves, feel free to do that in the chat, please. And as I understand, and Joyce, correct me if I'm wrong, we'll be sending the recording or something similar if there is any presentation and so on to the group later on. Is that correct, Joyce?
Yes, that's correct. And the slides will be sent tomorrow too.
Be great.
And I will also put my name and address. Anybody does not get them or whatever the case may be, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to help. Again, my name is Tariq Malik. I'm in South Florida, and number and everything will be in the chat. So over to you, gentlemen. Go and teach us something, please.
Let me do just a real quick request for you guys in the chat. Please putting your where you're at and whether you have a finance background, an accounting background, or an income tax and accounting background, A, B, or C, and your email address if you'd like us to send information about fractional to you in the future and remind you about some of the other meetings that are coming up that Brad and I are going to be doing. So if you put those in there, we'll bug you, and if you don't, it'll be okay too. And I always like to say, if I send you emails and you're not happy with them, just unsubscribe. Don't spam me, guys. I'm just trying to do my best to communicate with you. So, be good stuff. Okay.
Excellent.
Brad, you want to take this slide?
Yeah, one of the things that I know I like to do and Mark likes to do, because we've done these types of presentations now for over a year. Mark's done them for longer than that. Is we really want this to be an open discussion. So what we don't want it to be is just Brad talks for a while and Mark talks for a while and lecture mode. It's not effective. It's not the best use of your time. We know that you're all here for a reason. And perhaps if there's something that you want to get out of this in particular, just go ahead and chat that question in and we'll try to address it either during the presentation or after. But this is really an open forum. And to the extent that you chat something in that's relevant to the slide that we're on, Mark and I will pay attention to that and we'll address it as we go. If not, we'll address them at the end.
Yeah, we'll try to watch out for the chats. If you start hearing me say some things like repetitively right or that means I'm trying to draw something out of you, and that means it's just my bad habit. So please make this interactive, as Brad has said. And we are recording, so watch out what you say. It's good. And Brad, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I appreciate Tariq's introduction and the help of the FENG. My beginning is Brad Martyn. I am the founder of a company called FocusCFO. I live in Columbus, Ohio. That's where we started in 2001. I tell you, the thing that I think that's unique about, and my background is, I'm just looking at some of yours. My background is really similar to yours. I was a accounting degree, went to work for a big CPA firm, went to work for a couple of public companies for 15 years, and 23 years ago, I decided I wanted to help small and medium-sized businesses. Back then, we called it all part-time CFO, but the concept was kind of a day a week and giving these really small and medium-sized businesses access to world-class talent that they could never afford on their own. And the only thing I can really figure out that I'm different than the hundreds of people I talk to is I've never worked a client. So I wasn't trained as a sales guy. When I went to market in Central Ohio, I started telling people what we were trying to do. And some very passionate bankers who were very strong salespeople took me under their wing and taught me how to relationship sell. And so my message was always, I'm building a CFO team. And that got a lot of attention. And then in the 2010, 11, we started to expand into other cities. Today we're in, I think it's 15 states. We're probably in the top 3 in the country, if not top 2 in terms of the number of CFOs we have on our team. But we run a business model that's a little bit different than most folks. We have experienced entrepreneurs or experienced salespeople that take the lead on business development. So out of our 200 people, 40 of them are those. Those are in every market we're in. And then we have CFOs that actually do the work. So it's a partnership between what we call the area president, of which Tarek is an area president for us, leading in business development, and the CFOs that actually service the client. So that's a little bit different. There's other great business models out there. We love all of our competitors and just are passionate about the industry.
Excellent.
I really appreciate Brad, and I come from the other side of the scale. I'm pretty much a solo entrepreneur, so you get both sides. Brad's built a phenomenal, probably the best CFO system or CFO group in the country from what I can tell. So I always appreciate him being there. I'm pretty much on my own. And this tells you, my slide tells you just a little bit about myself, but I will tell you, when I really think about why you might want to listen to what I have to say, it has to do with the fact that I'm doing it. I've been pretty much on my own for over 10 years, lots of pivots, lots of changes, but I've learned, and I have a great balanced lifestyle now. I work on clients about 10 hours a week, 10 to 15 hours a week. And then the rest of the time I do other projects, like talk to you about fractional. And one of the things you're going to hear a little bit about as we go through today is a class that my partner Brendan Filbert and I put together called Freeway to Fractional. And Freeway to Fractional is a course that we sell. And if you want to know more about it, that'll help you it's 4 modules. It takes you step by step through the process of understanding what fractional means and how you can set it up, from developing your market hypothesis, going to the market, what the back office should look like, what you should know when you're looking at groups, all the way to scaling and getting beyond the time for money paradigm that we talk about sometimes. So I've done a little of this, been fairly successful, actually help people learn it. And that's about all I'm going to say about that, unless you guys have any questions as we go along the way. But Brad and I thought about what we were going to do, and we really thought, well, what are the 4 things everyone needs to know about fractional? And these are the highlights. What is fractional? And I'll say fractional versus consulting or interim. Why would you want to be a fractional leader? You need to really understand your service area and the pros and cons of a group versus being a solo entrepreneur. We're not going to be able to handle all the questions you have about fractional in one meeting, but we thought these 4 highlights might be a good primer to start you out with. So, Brad, you want to take the first slide?
Thanks, Mark. One of the things I just invite you all to think about, as we go through this, we're going to talk about lots of different things, how people define fractional. We're going to talk about group. We're going to talk about solo. But I want to invite you to think about what it is that you really and truly want to do. Fractional is a concept that I think it got a lot of buzz during COVID. Prior to that, I would occasionally hear people use the word fractional. We've used it for a while. Before that, we called it part-time. Ben Wolf wrote a book called Fractional Leadership. He put that out a couple years ago. And what Ben did is he really began to introduce to people on a broad basis this concept of fractional. And what fractional means is you take a C-suite level executive, and they take their time and they work on companies. Like Monday might be one company, or Tuesday might be another company, or 5 or 10 hours a week might be another company. But it's not project oriented, and it's not consulting oriented. Think back to the jobs we've all held in the past where that we were full-time CFOs or controllers or VP of finance or whatever within a large organization. Could be a 50, 100, $200 million company. And there we had very defined roles. We were part of the leadership team. Sometimes we managed a department. What fractional does is take that same level of executive and puts them into, for us, a lot of times it's businesses that are between 2 and 20 million of revenue that could never afford to spend $2 or $3 or $400,000 for a full-time CFO. But what they do is they get, the line I always use is you get 20% of the time of a fractional executive for 25% of the cost. So a $300,000 a year executive might cost a business $75,000. And that fits within their budget. And it also is about the right amount of time for that very experienced executive to spend with that young or small company. And so fractional applies to, and this is where you get into the program that Mark and Brennan, our business is Fractional CFO. That's really all we do. The Freeway to Fractional program, they're working with people that are fractional HR, fractional IT. It could be fractional legal. Again, think about the fractional marketing. Think about the C-suite level services that a lower middle market business might need access to. So that's the concept of fractional. That's what this presentation is about. Some of you may say, well, that's kind of nice, but what I really like to do is project work, or I like to do maybe interim work where that somebody is between CFOs and I'm going to come in and work for 3 or 4 months with them. Perhaps it's consulting or project. We'll talk about that more later, but those things really begin to get outside the definition of what true fractional is. So if anybody has any questions about that, go ahead and chat them in, but that's what we want to lead with. Mark, you want to take this one?
Sure. We really do need to make the distinction between what a fractional leader is and a consultant. A friend of mine gave me this definition several years ago, and I really like it. A consultant comes in, discovers a problem. They sit in the conference room 40 to 70 hours a week until it's done, and then they disappear. And they're on to the next project. Whereas a fractional leader, as Brad said a minute ago, is a long-term member of the company's leadership team. So what I like to point out is that the CFO doesn't balance the checkbook in any company. So if you find yourself balancing the checkbook and wanting to charge CFO rates, you're probably in the wrong place. Questions? Comments? Does this make sense to anybody? Is this what you expected, or did you have a different perception of what we were going to talk about, anybody?
And feel free to unmute yourself if you want to just make a comment.
Please do. You don't have, we're good with verbal cues as well. Matter of fact, I prefer them. But Eric says this is what he expected, so that's very good.
Well, can I, and while you're thinking about that, let me tell a story if I can. So, um, back in my corporate life, so this is in the late 90s, I had worked for a public company and we went, we raised a whole bunch of capital and I was the guy that got to go out and spend it. So I was involved. And again, a lot of you can relate to this. So, we would identify companies we wanted to buy, and a lot of them were 2 to 20 million in revenue. We were a $200 million public company, and we were looking to just create some new verticals and access some different types of clients. So we would go out and buy these companies, 2 to 20 million, and they were all started by a first generation entrepreneur. And I would go in and talk to them, and I would explain to them what we were trying to do. I said, look, we're going to pay you. You're going to have to work for us for some number of years, 3 years to get all that. But I told them up front, I said, look, we're going to destroy your culture because you're an entrepreneurial by the seat of your pants. You're making it up as you go. And we're going to bring you into a very disciplined public company environment where that, look, and a lot of you can relate to this. I mean, it's quarter to quarter and we budgets and forecasts and managing the street expectations and, board meetings and all this. And the reaction I usually got was, well, that's kind of cool. I always wanted to work for a public company. Okay, so this is all true story.
Everybody's laughing.
Yeah, always wanted to work for a public company. So not only did I get to put the deals to do the due diligence and put the deals together, but once they were inside the company, I was the guy that got to work with them on integration. And so lo and behold, we closed the deals and, they get the first part of their money and they go out and they buy a new house or whatever they did. And I'm working with them and I'm just trying to, what I knew was the reason that they had wanted to do the deal was they were passionate about sales. Think about entrepreneurs. They're passionate about sales or they're passionate about operations, but the accounting and finance stuff was tough for them. And they all typically had somebody on their team, an office manager. It could have been a controller. It could have been their outside CPA. Somebody was doing the historical rear view mirror accounting for them. And so as we would begin to get into budgeting and forecasting, I was really teaching them what they didn't know. And they were expecting us to take all the finance and administration off the table. That's why they sold, because that stuff was getting hard and they weren't spending enough time on what they were passionate about. And I just watched systematically 6, 9, 12 months after the deal, I had a number of them come to me and say, what you, and it wasn't me, Brad Martyn, it was what all of us know how to do, which is be really good, forward-looking GPS, create the roadmap, strategic planning. And they would say to me, if I could have worked with someone like you, I probably wouldn't have sold my company. Mm-hmm. And that broke my heart because there was no way out for them at that point. But that's where the seed was planted for me in the year 2000 and 2001 was, how do we bring what we do? Again, this is not consulting. It's not a project. It is taking something away from them that they're not good at, doing it way better than they ever could. But more important than that, letting them go back to their passion. Because that's what we do fractionally as fractional executives. We're really good at this stuff. In a 2 to 20 or 2 to $30 million company, they're not going to get over our heads. There's nothing we haven't seen before. And it frees up the business owner to do what they want to do. That's not the case in a consulting model. It's not the case in a project model. You might relieve short-term pain, but we're talking about relieving long-term pain and letting them grow their business. So maybe that resonates with some of you, but that's kind of what happened for me and where this all started on my journey.
Excellent.
Any comments? It's good. Brad's really interesting. I'm doing, it's pseudo fractional right now, but I'm doing M&A work for $100 million company with 3 or 4 targets where I'm in there leading that. They have no M&A experience. and I'm in there leading their M&A group on a fractional basis. So it's been a lot of fun.
Great
And
stuff.
exactly the same thing you're talking about is, we're going into these, $10 million mom and pops and buying them out, right? And it's really an interesting experience.
Yeah. There's a great question in here from Slav, if I'm pronouncing it right. We'll get to your question on another slide, but your question is really good. I just point everybody to it and just kind of keep track of what people are asking.
There you go.
Okay, let me take this slide. This is
your slide.
This is one of our marketing pieces. So, it's interesting. And fractional look, the word is everywhere now. There's articles in the Wall Street Journal. There's articles in Forbes and Fortune. There's CPA firms now that are trying to differentiate themselves that say they do fractional CFO work. So within the spectrum of what we hear people talk about, and again, my position is, look, none of us have any real means to or right to say to somebody what they can say and what they can't. It's really up to people. But those of us that have all been CFOs in our careers, or VP of finance, or even saw the FP&A, which is very CFO oriented, really understand what the role is. But we see the project people saying they do fractional. So we don't embrace that. That's what they say. Anybody that does fractional knows that that's not what fractional is. Project, as Mark said, defines scope. It tends to be, you run at the problem as fast as you can. I always say you're like a trained killer. You just go in and just kind of fix it. And they expect you to be an expert at it, and you do it. But when it's done, you're done. Interim, again, larger organization between CFO quits. They want to hire somebody. They need somebody 3, 4, 5 days a week for what? 30, 60, 90, 120 days. We really don't do project or interim work at FocusCFO. We will occasionally dabble in a small project if we think it's going to lead to interim. But there are staffing firms are a great place to go if you want to do project work or interim work. And some of the fractional firms, I know Vaco, we know them well, Midwest, Southeast based, are actually advertising for fractional CFOs. But what it is, it's project and interim work. So anyway, they say whatever they say. Towards the right side, and I would say to some degree, virtual CFO can be fractional for sure. Again, the concept is it's recurring. The concept is it's long term. We do some virtual work. It's a little bit harder because you really want to get fractional. You want to get embedded into the management team. You want to become part of the leadership team. You want to fill the CFO role. That gets done virtually. And there's some great, VCFO is out of Texas someplace. They've been around for longer than we have. They're a great firm. Preferred CFO, I think, is out of New York. They do everything virtually. People all sit at home and they service clients, but it does tend to be more recurring. The CPA firms are actually, not to steal the phrase bundle like the insurance companies, but what a lot of them are doing is they're bundling. They have these sticky tax clients that are like a $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 a year client, and fractional CFO can be $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 a month. So a CPA firm someone might join a CPA firm as their fractional CFO, or as a member of the fractional CFO team, and work with some of those clients in that accounting CFO bundle. Again, it tends to be more virtual, but it can be on site. But we play in the middle role. I know a lot of what Mark and people that he's worked with are in the middle role, where that it's really you're really filling the true CFO function, and that's everything from managing the accounting, not necessarily doing it, but managing it, but heavy FP&A, heavy forecast oriented, heavy strategic planning, and really filling the C-suite role. We find that fractional CFO really works well If it's anywhere from 2 to 8 days a month, when we price fractional, again, depends on the market, but just assume it's a day a week, which is 4 days a month, is $7,000. You do the math, that's $84,000 a year. You'd be surprised at the size businesses that can pay that. That's our rate with $3 billion companies all day long, because it's an opportunity cost presentation to the business owner. It tends to be long-term. We have clients we've worked at fractionally for 21 years. So we have other clients we work with for 2 or 3 years until they outgrow us, and then we help them find a full-time CFO. But I think the point about being embedded in the leadership team, just like a true CFO would have a seat at the table, is really what we're looking for. And it tends to be a very experienced person. Most of the folks on our team have at least 20 or 25 years of true CFO experience. And you find that's the case with even solo people. So, we FocusCFO, we talk about the team model, but you can be a very effective solo fractional CFO working 3 to 5 clients and filling that role on a long-term, recurring, part-time basis.
And on this spectrum here, sometimes because I don't have the brand that FocusCFO has and all this, I have to do a project like this M&A project to get in and build relationship. They pay me well. I do the work, I enjoy it. I expect that by the time I'm done with the 3 targets that we're doing with, that I'll never leave the leadership role in this company. So you've sort of, it's nice if you can walk right in and be that person, but we teach good, better, and best in Freeway to Fractional, which is a good offering, something that brings a lot of value, that's not incredibly expensive, and it gets you in the door. But you never sell that as the end of the job. And we'll talk a little bit more about defining your life, but I want to, in this particular slide, wherever you can get in the door, you land and you expand your services. And the difference between the way I position myself is I'm doing this so we get to know each other so that I can be your CFO for a long time. I talk about it over and over again so they understand that my relationship isn't just for this project. So I don't know if that's perfectly set here, but people go, well, how do you get into these companies and become a leader? Well, you have to build relationship. You have to find a way to get in to build relationship. And a lot of times that is project work.
And Mark, let me piggyback on that because it's an excellent point. So, one of the things we want to make sure that you are sensitive to is Mark's been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for a long time. So we've gotten to a place where we're really in control of the types of things we do. In the first 3 years, half the stuff that we did was project, and we did interim stuff. I would take anything to get people busy and to begin to develop contacts and a brand and all that. I think the challenge when you're solo, again, you can decide however you want to do it, but the challenge when you're solo is to really develop your personal brand and to begin to get clients. You have to spend some amount of time on business development. And so what I found was a project, let's say you go out in the market and you start talking to people and you're going to do the solo thing and you get a nice project that's 4 or 5 days a week. Cash flow is phenomenal. But guess what happens as soon as it's over? You're actually back at square one. So it's just something to be sensitive to. And sometimes even when I say we don't do projects, the projects we actually tend to do exactly like Mark said. If we think it's going to lead to something else, and we might say it's a project, but we want to do it 1 or 2 days a week because we want to take our time and make sure we schedule around it and not get one person too beholden to a project. That way we can still continue to market fractional, but we can still take that project and hopefully it leads to something else, just like Mark's point was.
Right. And I will bounce a couple points that are absolutely right. Projects cannot be full-time. You have to put time barriers around them because you get to the end of the project and you just were a consultant. And my favorite thing is I have this list I put together, the 10 things that people do wrong when they start their fractional service business. And number 5, which is so counterintuitive, is getting too big a client. Because you get really, if you're not a little hungry, you're not out talking to people. So you, and literally, if you pick up a 3 or 4 day a week client at the rates that you can charge, you're going to be very comfortable, but it's just like having a job. All your eggs are in one basket. So you lose that client and you're starting over.
Well, think about it as a CFO, if you went to work for a company and 80% of their revenue came from one customer,
Exactly.
what would you say as the CFO? Customer concentration is too high. That's what we actually do when we take those projects. And
Right.
Anyway.
I see it all the time. And I'll also tell you, the biggest challenge you'll have in having a long-term fractional practice is that your clients are going to want to hire you. And you have to say no. You got to stay on the dark side over here.
I'm going to take Slava's question here. He says, is the difference in project CFO versus fractional CFO really in the compensation structure? And then he says, for project, it is usually shorter duration and gets paid in cash. And for fractional, I would expect some equity in the mix and no end date. We do, and I'll let Mark comment on this. We have a higher bill rate for a project. Not a lot, but maybe 20% higher. We bill everything on a day rate or a monthly retainer, but we actually never take equity. And you will talk to fractional CFOs who do take equity in companies. And I've talked to a lot of them. And usually what they'll say is, look, I would normally bill $8,000 or $10,000 a month. I'm going to take half in cash and half in stock appreciation rights or options or something. That's just a personal decision as to whether you want to take that risk. I've never seen any equity or anything on a project.
I agree. Although people are very successful. Our good friend Jeff Peterson, he was a fractional CFO for many years, and he ended up picking up equity in 2 or 3 companies to the point where he's no longer a fractional CFO, right? Because he's done that. So that is an option to pick up that kind of compensation. I will tell you, I'm a startup junkie. So this is really hard for me, but I'm telling you, I need to get paid today. I'm not waiting or taking a discount on my hours for some illusion, emotional, illusionary future value. So I'm going to take my rate plus the equity if I'm doing it, or I don't care. Because some people have a magic touch and, go out in the rain once and get wet. That's not been my experience in startups. I have yet to, hit a home run. So I personally think get paid today and take the any equity as a bonus, but don't count on it. So
there's another question here from Greg, and I'll just read the second part. He says, is there an equity component to some of the compensation? So we talked about that. He says, in lieu of a fixed rate of $250 or $300 an hour. Mark, what are you billing hourly, or do you bill day rates, or how do you do it?
I grew up in hourly. It's been so hard for me to not think hourly, but I am absolutely converting to monthly retainers. $3,000 to $5,000, $6,000 a month, but I don't commit a full day. So it just depends on how much I'm willing to do, but it's no longer based on my hours, and it's based on the value that I'm going to bring that company. So I have a group right now, $5,000 a month. I might work 3 hours, 4 hours a week. They're happy. I keep them on track. I bug them. They're happy. So it has nothing to do with my hours anymore. And if you grew up a baby boomer with KPMG and Duff and Phelps and all these different consulting backgrounds, that's really was hard for me to convert from. But it really is better for you for multiple reasons. Primarily because you can actually, you can budget your income per month. If a client doesn't call or they don't do anything, you're hourly, you can't add another client because you've committed that capacity. But if nothing happens and you're hourly, you don't make any money. That is just a no-win situation for us.
And Mark, you're providing most of your support remotely, is that correct?
I have clients in 5 states. I have clients I've never been in their office. But that's me. I can get by with that. A lot of them I've had long-term relationships with them. This group I've known for these guys for 20 years. Nobody else could do what I'm doing for them. They actually offered me twice as much to stop and just work for them, and I said no. So
I know the question was about hourly. We used to bill hourly too. I grew up same as Mark, and there's a great book. It was written in the 90s. It's called Firm of the Future. It was about the CPA industry. And in it, I can't remember the guy's name that wrote it, but he was highly critical of the hourly billing model. And he was saying that for CPA firms to really for professional services firms to really begin to improve their margins and develop efficiency, they needed to move to a retainer model or a fixed fee model, let's say. So we started off hourly. Probably in first 15 years we were hourly. The problem with hourly I found was that when you say your rate is $250 an hour, the client automatically assumes you're making $500,000 a year, which is more than they make. And so we moved to a retainer model where we charge a fixed amount every month. Now we do 95% of our work on site. So that's how we become embedded. Mark becomes embedded doing it remotely or virtually. Both of them work, but because they actually see us and we're there, we just found the retainer model worked really well, and it fits into the talk track about the investment they're making. And we don't ever want people to think that, look, if they call us on a Saturday or a Thursday night or whatever, we don't want them to think that we're like their attorney who's going to bill them for half an hour or their CPA who's going to ding them for an hour, because we're all executives and we're all used to working overtime, so it's really the same thing. So
that's a really good point, Brad. When I was hourly, I'd find out about a mess like 2 weeks later because they didn't want to pay $500 to save them $40,000 of problems, right? So it's a mental thing as well. And I'd rather have that relationship where they're looking to communicate with me and not having that barrier around it. Yvette, we're going to get to the types of offerings here in a little bit, so we'll get back with you on that, just to answering your text or your chat. And I will send out the 10 things that you do wrong when you're starting your fractional business. It could take me a minute, but I'll get that out to Joyce as well. Okay. All right. I think we've sort of covered what a fractional is and how different ways of doing it. Any questions about the things we've spoken about so far, team? Okay.
Yes, can I
Sure.
put it on the chat?
Either way.
Go ahead, Carson. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You're here.
You rattled off some rate information. I was just trying to understand what is if there is such a thing, typical or average rate for the fractional services, hourly or daily or however you're measured.
Yeah, let's take that at the end along with Yvette's question when we get to the different types of, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Carson.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Brad, Mark, if you don't mind going to the previous slide for a second, we kind of defined the timing of the fractional CFO, and you talked about not taking equity, which I'm assuming is because the companies you support are further away from the IPO than probability of success would suggest. Is there a certain exit point, or is a certain time frame that you take this company on, a certain goals, you try to get them to Series B, C, D, or whatever, or how do you define your success and your exit point?
Well, it's a great question. We at Focus, we have, I mean, a huge client for us is 100 million in revenue. Because again, you think about fractional, there's a point in the growth of the business when what they really need is a full-time CFO. I mean, a lot of this is industry. Manufacturing is very complicated. You tend to need full-time people earlier than, say, a services company. But our definition of success is one of two things, and they're both based upon the growth of the business. You know, our value statement is we are helping business owners create sustainable, transferable business value. That's our goal. So the one we celebrate is when one of our clients sells, and we you know, they're not necessarily worth a huge amount when we start, but through what we do as CFOs, we help them create value, and it leads to some type of a transaction. It could be a sale, it could be an ESOP, it could be the management team taking over, or it could be the business owner hiring somebody else to run their company and just kind of clipping coupons. So when we help a business owner achieve that, we actually give an award out for that. We call it a Sherpa award. But look, I have a client right now that's 200 million that we work with, and we've said to them, you have to get a full-time CFO. You have to. We cannot do this anymore fractionally. We're there 2 days a week. They love us. They want us to stay. We'll probably stay in some role, but as the business grows, that's how really we find the success is we work ourselves out of a job. We don't work with that many companies that are raising Series A, B, C. I mean, there are some, but what you'll find when you look at the addressable market, again, depending on where you are, is the number of businesses in that 2 to 20 or 2 to $30 million range. I mean, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. There's 15,000 businesses in our target market of $2 to $20 million here in Central Ohio. And in South Florida, I think the numbers are 4 times that. So it's like you can go upstream where it's more competitive, where other people are kind of fighting for services, or you can choose to go downstream where the business owner really doesn't have any trusted advisors, and you got a chance to have the seat at the table right next to the business owner. So success is defined differently depending on kind of which segment of the market you choose to go after.
There's clearly no shortage of work. As you said, there's thousands of businesses in the smaller scale that needs the CFO support. The question, of course, is how do you make it profitable for yourself as a service? And if you take out the upside of the equity compensation, I don't know if you take out or if you have some sort of success fee when you exit the business or when you help the business exit, or because purely on the hourly or even retainer, it is difficult to sustain. Like they need a lot more energy from you that $80,000 a year would suggest, you know.
Mark, you want to take that?
Yeah. You're not there to do the work. You're there to direct it and set strategy. If they need more energy, that means they're not building. You're there to build their organization, their processes, and their people, so that they're not dependent on you. So that's number one when I'm reacting to that. The second thing is I will take success fees on certain types of work, like this M&A work. It's not going to be this, the 10% a broker would take, because I'm going to get paid. I'm taking no risk. But I will say it's no fun to go to the closing table and be the only one not getting a piece of cake. So I take a small success fee on any kind of M&A work that I do. But it's all balances out. And I'm not taking risk for it. There's nothing wrong with getting equity, but it shouldn't be. Maybe it's someplace where you've worked a day a week and you've built a relationship and you understand the business and you're willing to put more into it if there's a kicker in it. So I wouldn't say it's not to do it. It's just, it's not a starting point from my perspective.
And we can take that offline too.
Yeah.
And Mark, we probably need to move through the slides.
do.
We've got 30 minutes
Yeah, this
left.
is all
so.
good. Yeah, we're having too much fun. But that was probably the most important thing we've talked about. The second thing we wanted to talk about is why fractional? Because so many people discount fractional as a career choice. And I dropped a few things here, but I will tell you, after the last career search, job search I did, after interviewing 4 times, being flown all over the country for interviews, and then getting totally ghosted, I made a commitment to myself emotionally to be told I'm completely unemployable. I just don't have it in my heart to put up with the Fortune 100, 500 mentality anymore. So, Brad, how about yourself?
We kind of define it. I'm not sure if you use this word, but we defined it as becoming unemployable.
Yeah.
And it's just like, look, how many of us have put our heart and soul into a business or whatever, and we thought there was going to be some, we thought our options were going to be worth something, and all of a sudden they're not worth anything because somebody at the top made a decision we didn't agree with and the stock price tanked, or you work really hard, you get riffed out of a job because your last name is not the same one as the owner of the company. And it's like, it's just about really taking control of your destiny. That's how we look at it.
I'm with you. I was right on this borderline. I was still looking for work. It was probably 11, 12, 15 years ago. And I was at a FENG meeting, and we were going around the table, really nice place. And people were saying, what do they want to do? The chairman was saying, what would you like to be? Well, I want to be a CFO. I want to be a, 15 guys, it finally gets to me. And I say, I don't want to be a CFO. They all looked at me. Why do you want to be a CFO, Mark? I said, I'm just really tired of making good numbers better. It wears me out. It just doesn't make sense anymore for me. I guess I got tired of the game. So you really have, if you've ever had these kinds of thoughts, you really seriously have to talk to someone about being a fractional, because it does provide you, I think I have another slide, this work-life balance. If you work with Brad's group, for example, you can pick 1 day a week or 2 days a week or 3 days a week, depending on your needs. For me, I created the 10 to 15 hour work week. Now, it doesn't mean I don't work 60 hours a week. I've got this weird workaholic problem where I'm doing projects. And I told you I was a startup junkie, so I always have something. I call them lottery ticket projects. If they ever hit, they're going to be great, but the probability is so low. It's just fun. But it gets me out of bed in the morning. I enjoy it, right? I enjoy those projects. I enjoy my clients. And someone said earlier, and I did sort of, Paul, can I do this? I don't want to be available year round, right? I don't know your situation, but for me, as an example, the month of August, I'm going to be in Michigan boating. I might work an hour or two here. I'm going to keep my clients happy. I'm going to get my retainers because they know I'm coming. I've talked to them all about it. They'll just be a little more flexible, but you can work more flexibility into your lifestyle than any job. Brad?
I'm actually responding to a chat.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, but it is, look, we have people that join us. So we have 2 types of people that join us. We have people kind of in their 40s that have got 20 years of senior finance experience that have said, I'm not doing the corporate thing. I want to make this my career. And we pick other people that are 55, 60, 65 years old that have thought about retiring, but they do it for like a year and they're bored out of their mind. And it's like they come to us and say, I got gas in the tank left. And they're tremendous people. And some of them say, I mean, our most common is a 3-day work week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for as long as they want. And so you get 4-day weekends the rest of your life. And you get to work for as long as you want. And then when something happens to a client, they might cut back to 2 days. But that level of expertise and experience is just so valuable to a lot of these entrepreneurs, because with 25 or 30 years of experience, we have seen so much that these smaller business owners, they've never even had anybody talk to them about the basic stuff that we're talking about. And when you couch it around, we want to help you grow the value of your business, so you actually have a business that's throwing off strong cash flow. And now you're just being really good CFOs and doing your thing. So, but the balance, it's like whatever. I mean, I quit my job because I was tired of working 70 hours a week and being on an airplane all the time. And I had 5 kids at home. And so I remember when I quit, I quit the day before 9/11. And I remember when I told my wife, it's like, look, this will either work or it won't. It's all on me, but I'm in complete control. And you know what? I never missed a single thing with my kids from that point forward. I went to every single thing I wanted to go to. I just scheduled around it.
Right. I just can't tell you how nice it is for me. Of course, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I've had lunch and I'm getting a little drowsy and I just go to the gym because I can. And it works. It's not easy to build it on your own. So, you really do have to look at groups such as, you should look at groups such as FocusCFO. But for me, even that is more restrictions than I want to do. It just doesn't work for me. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there are great groups out there.
There are great groups. And
great.
I can rattle off 10 of them. It's all kind of done differently. And, the thing we probably won't get to, and maybe we could cover another time with you guys if you wanted, is, and to the comment about equity, look, it doesn't really matter what we want. It matters what we can sell. And we can be very selective about the types of things, but certain things are easier to sell, particularly when the whole thing about, it's always this in every business, is like, which is more important, sales or operations? And as CFOs, fractionally, we're operations. But as a CFO doing it on your own, you have to be both. And boy, the moment of truth is when you're sitting in front of a prospect and they're like, so how much do you charge? Moment of truth, baby. You get one chance. So anyway, we can talk more about that later. But
we are really going to talk about, there's been questions here in this chat about fees and expectations and whatnot. And the next thing I think we're going to talk about, Brad, if I remember our slides, is your service offering.
yeah,
right? And so someone said their expectations are that you're going to be available for certain numbers of hours and you're going to help close the books and do this lower level stuff. Well, we've had discussions about controller versus CFO over and over again. And a lot of our whole market, at least in Kansas City, I would venture to say 80% of the people that call themselves CFOs in my market are controllers. So if you sell yourself as a controller, and let me be clear, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a fractional controller. For me, it's a little challenging when you sell yourself as a fractional CFO and you're a controller, but that's, as Brad said, they can say whatever they want to say about what they are. Okay. If you don't set the expectations of what you do and the value that you bring, you will always be fighting the rate per hour battle. Always. These guys that pay me $5,000 a month to talk to them 3 or 4 hours a week, they know that I'm going to double and quadruple their business by doing that. And they're willing to pay me to help them do that. And we've talked about their goals. We meet weekly, you know, and we have 90-day goals, but I'm not doing them. And I hold them accountable to those goals. And I help them design that process. So I don't know. I just, like I said, if you want to be paid $5,000 to $7,000 a month for a day a week, and you're in there balancing the checkbook and closing books, you probably are overcharging. Brad?
Agree completely. And, you know, so we, you know, one of the questions is about, as Mark's addressing, you know, a small business under 10 million, a lot of what they need is closing work. So there's really a couple of approaches to that we find. One of them is kind of in our referral network. And again, you'll have your own referral network, people that you know that do different services. Just get a bookkeeping firm or get somebody that is a solo person that does controller work. And so when you get into these situations, you say, look, I'm willing to come in. Here's what I would do as the CFO, but I'm going to have somebody else come in, or I'm going to refer somebody else in, and you can hire them directly, and they'll be responsible for closing the books. Okay, that's one approach to do it. So you kind of partner with them on it. The other one is you find somebody in the organization and you train them. You know, we always have this thing. It's like, well, we never put journal entries in, but we will teach somebody how to do it. Okay, so whether that's an office manager or any, I mean, we can teach them. Now, the third part of it is actually the most interesting for me. And, you know, I'm really fatigued at going into these smaller businesses. And again, not to be critical of what the CPAs do, but some of these things are so over accounted. It's like, this is the simplest business. And why are we accruing real estate taxes every month? And why are we prepaying this? And, you know, they run so many things to the balance sheet. And the reality is there's only about 3 things. You know, why are you even accruing payroll? In a really small service company, do you really need to do that every month? And it's like, the simpler you can make the account, because the owner doesn't understand the accounting anyway. So the simpler you can make the accounting, and you can kind of undo some of that crap that's on the balance sheet, you can get to a point where there's really nothing to closing the books. I mean, receivables goes in, payables goes in, payroll goes in, and it's just kind of clean. But if it does need to be complicated, just partner with somebody and have them do it if there's nobody there to teach. Again, but you can decide, and you can decide that you want to be that quasi controller CFO, and you can offer kind of a bundled solution. You can do that. You just have to be careful what you say. There's a big brand, I'm not going to say who they are, but they're a large group and they call themselves something CFO. But you know, 80 to 90% of their people are controllers and accounting managers. And they do a little bit of CFO, but they do mostly controller. So things like that just create the wrong perception about what a CFO really does, and dilutes what everybody does.
Yeah, it goes back to our initial discussion about what is a fractional CFO. And I always think about consulting and a lot of what people do. And, you know, you put your hand in a bucket and when you pull it out, there's no difference. And that's how I feel about a lot of consulting. That may be a little insulting, but I don't want to do that. I want to, if I'm not I say it all the time and I mean it, if I'm not helping them build their systems, processes, and people, I'm not doing my job, because I don't want them dependent on me. So if I do, you know, if you're closing the books and you go away for the month of August, it's a problem. If you're doing strategic work, you can get on the phone with them for a couple of hours, you know, between fishing trips, and you keep them happy. It's just that simple for me.
And let me just one comment, Mark, if I could, before I forget. Please. I think I'm older than you, so I lose my track of my. One of the it's interesting so if we're doing work, we either do like half a day a week, or we do a day a week, or sometimes we do 2 days a week, but those are the 3 fractional offerings. It's interesting when we find, and I think this lines up with what Mark's talking about, when we're with somebody 3 or 4 hours a week, it's one of 2 things. It's heavy consulting, and not consulting, it's heavy coaching and teaching and mentoring. And that can be the accounting department, the finance person, or the business owner. It's heavy that, or it's heavy based on deliverables. Heavy FP, and they got a good accounting function. We're doing budgeting and forecasting and developing metrics, and we develop those things, and then we have other people in the organization take them over. But in that half a day a week model, it seems to be one of those 2. So again, you can look at the triangle there, you can see kind of where those fit. The deliverables are probably financial statements and reports and maybe some measurement and management. The coaching is strategic planning, decision-making, things like that. When we do a day a week, we're bundling those together. So it's like half of our time is coaching and teaching and mentoring and just sitting and talking to the business owner, leadership team. And the other half is focusing on deliverables. So again, that's how we've been able to kind of take the offering and customize it to what the client wants. Because again, it doesn't always matter what we want, it's what they want to buy. And so we have a whole process we go through to understand that, and then give them a solution that's customized to what they think they need. And then over time, we actually help them understand what they really need.
That's perfect. And I do mostly coach. I will explain that I have a financial analyst that works for me on an as needed basis, and I pay him $100 an hour, and he puts together the financial reports for me if I have to do analysis. And he's trained up. He knows what I'm looking for, and I'm perfectly happy not doing that.
I've got a buddy.
Part of what I'm billing out, I'm outsourcing to somebody else.
And there's just so many ways to do it. I've got a buddy in Michigan that has his own practice, and what he does is he'll go in and spend like a day a week or something for the first couple of months, but he's very deliverable oriented. He's not coaching at all. It's all deliverables. And he'll go in for the first couple of months and really get a feel for the business and define the deliverables. And then he does the rest virtually, and he charges a retainer. He might charge $5,000 a month and spend 3 hours a month on it, because he's got processes set up to extract from QuickBooks and actually produce the deliverables through third-party platforms that he uses.
That's a really good point. If you're hourly, you're not looking for ways to be efficient.
And there's other fractional CFO groups. You go to their website and they'll charge you $5,000 for a strategic plan and $3,000 for a budget. It's all deliverable pricing. So it's not even hourly or retainer based. It's focused on the deliverable. So that's another way I've seen people do it too. Okay, Mark, we have 7 minutes left.
I know we're going to run out of time. I will tell you on this slide, it's going to take you time, whether you go with a group or not, to build your CFO fractional business. I always say you might as well build the one you like. So I could build my business around a lot of different things that I do, but I built it around business transitions because that's what I love to do. So quick comment on that, Brad.
Nope, it's just what you want to do. There's so many different ways to do this. And get to the next part where we talk about joining a group.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So let's touch on that at the end.
I mean, I know we have a few minutes. This is an important slide. Think about it and give me a call. All right, we're here, Brad.
Well, look, and I've probably helped 200 people around the country. People call me all the time, and it's like they're like, "Hey, I'm thinking about being a fractional CFO. What can you help me?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll help you. Whatever you want." I said, I just have one question: are you trying to be a solo person that gets the work and does it yourself, or are you trying to build a practice, or do you just like business development? And so, depending upon the answer to that, it gets into, do you really want to be a solopreneur? And again, Mark and Brendan have a great program to help you understand what it means to be a solopreneur. Because at the end of the day, the solopreneur, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, my take is if you're a solo person, you probably, best case, you're going to spend 3 days a week on client delivery, but you've always got to be spending a couple of days a week on developing your network and being out. You may get to a point where that you've got 5 one-day-a-week clients, you can ride that for a long time, but those clients all come to an end. But you have to get comfortable as a solo person doing what most finance people are completely uncomfortable with, which is learning how to do business development. And there's programs out there and ways to do it. Within groups, there's different types of groups. We run our model where we have business development folks that are people like me. Mark would be a great business development person for us because he's experienced, he's credible. Even though he's a CFO, we can help him, leverage what he already knows. But people join us because they don't want to do any business development. They just want to do the client work, and that works for us. There's other large groups where that when you join, I call it the association model, where they'll come in and they'll teach you how to do business development. You come under an umbrella, but everybody you hunt and farm your own clients. That's a way to do it, or the solo model. But look, as a guy who spent $200,000 or $300,000 on mistakes kind of along the way, I wish I had been able to go through a program like Mark and Brendan's, or I wish I could have been able to join a group like FocusCFO, because we actually know what to do and we just teach people how to do it. And Mark and Brendan's program teaches people the business development side and how to really become excellent at fractional.
I will tell you that as you build your reputation, I don't spend very much time selling anymore, but my phone rings about every 2 weeks with an opportunity, and I land the ones I want. So it's nice, but it took time. I'm not saying that, but if you do join a group, Brad's or any of the others, make sure you know what you're getting into. That's the whole point, right? It shouldn't be discovery 6 months in. Oh, I thought I would get paid if I did this, or I thought I didn't know how this works. So make sure you do a really good job of interviewing and understanding the culture. If you think you're going into a group like Brad's that does CFO work, and you go into a group that's doing controller work, you should know that as an example, as maybe the most glaring example of what you might get stuck doing as a fractional CFO in some groups. Very important.
Well, and culture is just so important, everyone. It's so important.
My favorite thing is it used to, when we were kids, it was cash is king. It's not like that anymore. It's culture is king. They've changed the first C. You've got to understand where you're working, and don't be miserable going to work. If you join a group and all of a sudden you're just at the job again, this is your chance to get away from that. Okay. So that's all, that's what I have to say about this. And we've spent a lot of time and we're running out of time. So I'm going to close up, Brad, if that's okay.
Yeah, I do. Let me go ahead and talk about this slide. There are a couple questions here I think we can maybe address quick. Go ahead and do the wrap up, and then that way if people want to drop off, they can, but perhaps we can address some of these other comments.
Okay. Basically, I like to say you're in business by yourself, for yourself, but not by yourself. And there's lots of places to learn about. And I will tell you that if you're looking at groups and you're in a focus area or a city where FocusCFO is at, you should definitely check them out. And on the slides will be their website. If you're interested in learning more about how fractional works before you decide to get into it, and you're willing to invest a little time, I highly recommend my course called Freeway to Fractional. And this is the link to the website. And also just let me know if you need more information in the chat, and we'll get back to you. And then the other thing that happens, a couple of things that happen every month. Matt Budd does a fractional CFO stop by my office. His is more sort of process oriented, back office oriented discussions. And then Brad and I do a stop by my office every month, talking about various issues. We talked about, we had a guest talk about storytelling yesterday. How do you sell with stories? We've talked about fractional CFO versus controller. We've had a great deal of great conversations there. So we're absolutely would invite you to participate in those as you can. And Brad, if you can remember the questions, that'd be great. If you can answer a couple of you had in mind.
Well, I know the question for Greg says, what are the challenges in communicating with a smaller business, where I assume many of the business owners are not as sophisticated as those running a much larger business. I think this is the hardest thing I had to learn going the fractional route, particularly dealing with an entrepreneur as opposed to a professional manager. You know, a professional manager is spending somebody else's money. You know, a professional CEO or a professional president, an entrepreneur is spending their own money. But a professional manager really wants you to come in and change things. With an entrepreneur, you just got to be really careful how you communicate with them, because a lot of the bad decisions, all of the bad decisions in those organizations were actually made by the person you're talking to. And you have to be really careful what you say, because if you say things like, well, I've seen that before and it's never worked or whatever, your ability to earn their trust, you may be right, but you're not going to earn trust. So you have to learn how to communicate them in such a way that, you know, we screen for EQ, emotional intelligence, communication skills. Excellent communicator is one of our core values. That's one of the biggest challenges when communicating with a small business, is it's not your agenda. You have to understand their agenda and you have to lead them. And in our training, the thing I talk about is, if you're trying to get a horse to move, so think of the entrepreneur as a horse. If you get behind the horse and push, what's going to happen? You're going to get kicked. But if you get up in front of the horse, you grab it by the bridle and you stroke its mane and you talk to it and you coach it, you can coach it to get where you want it to go. And that's the difference. The professional manager wants you to push. The entrepreneur needs to be coached up. So that's a great question by Greg.
I'll comment on that too. It takes a tremendous amount of patience. It really does. You see things, you understand them. If you come in and say, we're going to fix this, and this way, you're going to blow up. They don't want you around. You're ruining, you know, you're, as Brad said, you're criticizing them. But if you take it a little at a time and you set reasonable quarterly or monthly goals and you build their trust, it'll take you twice as long as you think it should, but you're only there a day a week or a few hours a week. You just have to understand that they're already working too hard. So asking them to do more, asking them to invest money to build an org chart, right? And have staff, all those things take time, and it's a big, big change. And we all know that the hardest thing, whether it's good change or bad change is the hardest thing for people to deal with.
So that's a great question. So there's last one I'll take is, there was a question about value billing, I think, going in and having part of your engagement be a percentage of, let's say, incremental. Oh, here it is. I've seen information recently regarding value-based work, i.e. taking a percentage of your direct contribution and the increase to the bottom line. I've read those too. I actually don't know how to measure it. I've never been able to measure it because it's not just us, it's a collective. You want to get the organization moving forward. You know, think about the three roles in every organization: sales, operations, and finance. We want to occupy the finance chair, but we want to support the other facets of it. And look, if EBITDA goes up from $500,000 to $2 million, did I do that as a CFO or did the salesperson do it? I can see having an incentive program where that the leadership team is compensated based upon incremental profitability, and I'm one of those people. I can see that. That's just a regular profit sharing plan. I can't see segregating the CFO portion for that unless you're really running the organization. Mark, thought on that?
I can't say it any better. Ask enough for what you're doing and be comfortable with it. If you can sell it, I love what Brad said earlier. If you can sell it, go for it. You know,
Yeah.
I want everyone to take credit for the increase. Coach everybody along, be that cheerleader for the organization, enjoy the people, get everybody paid well as the business grows. It's one of the things I work with business owners on is, you know, incentive plans as things grow. So.
Look, and I'll just close. I would say, I'll speak for both of us are more than happy to talk. Now, I'm going to point a lot of you to Tarek. Tarek knows, I've never even been to Miami. I've never even been to South Florida. Okay. Tarek knows that market like the back of his hand. I would say if you have a lot of feedback coming from your mic, Tarek. So reach out to him. It's like Star Trek when you talk to him. I'm just kidding, but reach out to him and he'll give insights. And one of the things look, sometimes our model is the right one. Sometimes what Mark and Brennan do is the right one. Sometimes there's another model that's the right one. We're just really transparent with people. And look, 23 years in, we have 200 people. All I've asked people to do ever when we're talking to people about Fractional CFO is just be honest with them and help them find what's best for them and their family. It's not about we're the right solution for everybody or Mark and Brennan's the right solution. We'll help you as best we can find what's best for you and your family, because that's what's most important. So that's kind of what I'll leave with, but we just appreciate the chance to be here. Tarek, Mark, you want to say, and then we'll let Tarek wrap up?
Yeah, I do. I just basically, I don't think of Freeway to Fractional as a choice between being on your own and going with a group. I think of it as you have enough information and know whether you want to investigate going in on your own or going in a group, and you understand what's expected of you and how to do this. And I will say, I've never talked to Brad about this, but anytime I've been with any kind of professional services group, the people that know how to sell work, even if it's not their job, tend to do better. The rainmakers tend to do better than the ones that don't. So if you get into it and you understand how to expand a project without Tarek's great leadership, he's going to be very happy, right? And I'm sure there's some compensation for bringing in jobs. So I just think that understanding what fractional is, what's expected, and then going through the process of understanding what type of group you want to be part of is all part of what we teach. But I absolutely, if all groups were like FocusCFO, there would be no need for solopreneurs. Let me just go that way. So be good. All right. Anything else, guys? Tarek, you can wrap us up.
Yeah, guys, I've done the solopreneur for 18 years. I've been part of Focus now. I've been through the project work. I've been through all of this. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll give you my frank opinion. You may not agree with it. That's your prerogative, but that's okay. We're all wired differently and we all think differently. So please, I put my information in there. I'm grateful for Brad and Mark to give us their valuable time. And any questions, reach out. That's the best way to do it. And I'll be happy to jump on a call with you and do the needful as necessary.
Fantastic.